Welcome to the Smart Sales Solutions podcast, where we learn to implement intelligent solutions in a complicated marketplace with your hosts, Keith McKinney and Rich Rudnick.
Welcome, everyone, to the Smart Sales Solutions podcast. Our topic today is sell, buy, or lease, what you need to know regarding your next real estate commercial move. I'm your host, Rich Rudnick, and joining me today is my co-host, Keith McKinney. Keith, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Rich. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Let me get your bio real quick so people know who you are. And Sure. It's impressive. I'll try not to linger too long, but there's some key points that I definitely want to share in introducing you. First of all, Keith, been a client of Smart Sales Solutions since 2007. And so 12 years we've known each other. You're also one of our certified coaches since 2016. But let me get to the heart of your career. So 40-year background. I like how you say you like a built environment.
Yes.
And that combines your commercial and residential real estate background combined with being an engineer. Correct. So you've tied and brought that all together. You've been a broker owner. You've been a designated manager, designated broker. You've been there, done that. Whatever's been done in real estate, both residential and commercial, you've been there, done that, right? You know it. You're currently with Coldwell Banker Bain, and your title, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's commercial coordinator, correct?
The commercial director and coordinator.
Director and coordinator. So correct. Bain has 32 offices, and I think you mentioned there's 150 commercial agents, right? So there's a lot of residential, but 150 commercial.
Correct.
And that's a lot. And I appreciate this about you, Keith, your coaching heart or your teaching heart. In fact, for the last 15 years, you've been for state of Washington a clock hour trainer, right?
That's
so you've been
correct. Yes.
Been doing that for many, many years. That's great. You do big commercial projects. You're deep in. In fact, you have your own team as well, and we debrief in our coaching sessions. And our last session, I think you put like $100,000 of commission. In 2 weeks, new commission pending. Yeah. So that's a good track. Keep that up. Don't let that drop off on there. So you're a West Coast guy, born in California, live in Washington. You've done real estate up and down the West Coast, so you're really very specific and experienced there. You really are that true entrepreneur. Yeah. I like how you say, now do you have passion? We're going to hear your passion today. And that comes through.
Good.
But also your statement that you quit working, the day you started working for yourself. And that's spoken like a true entrepreneur. So, Keith, thanks so much. Again, so great to have you here. And I always learn from you, and I know we'll learn a lot today. And I want to really get into the nuts and bolts of what we want to talk about. The last podcast, Coach Don Cunningham and I did a Q2 forecast. So we kind of look back, look ahead. We kind of did that macroeconomic look. And we forecasted a very, very strong, robust second quarter. I think we're seeing that. In fact, since that broadcast, even stronger numbers from an economic and global or from our nation's economic standpoint have come in stronger than ever. Yeah. But I want to go commercial. On the commercial side, residential gets a lot of airtime. Yeah. And I don't know if there's anyone more experienced and qualified on the subject than you. So I want to get into this. So why don't you take us back on that? And why don't you just say, where are we at generally commercial real estate wise? Maybe a quick look back last year, Q1, and where we're heading. What's going on in the commercial sector?
Well, it's interesting. We kind of followed similar trends in the third and fourth quarter of 2018 that the residential markets did. And I think there was a lot of volatility there for a lot of different reasons. But we're all starting out pretty strong here in Q1 2019. And certainly with the start of the new year, I think on our commercial horizon, we're seeing a lot of e-commerce. This is really continuing to grow at a record pace. We saw that certainly in that third and fourth quarter, with internet sales just leapfrogging to big numbers, and these huge online retailers. But what's happening as a result of that? Now they're picking up industrial space all across the United States, to house logistics and warehousing and all these huge distribution centers. We've got move a lot of freight.
Yeah.
And so that market is really expanding in areas where we probably wouldn't have expected to see it expand. We're also seeing that kind of a new retail look, that the brick and mortar side of retail is changing, and the retailers are changing. First of all, the big box guys are beginning to rethink that whole retail paradigm, that whole shopping paradigm. How do people shop now? What do they really want? I had a local project here. It's a mixed use project in downtown Bellevue with a Target store now on the second floor in a large mixed use building. And talk about a paradigm shift. It's completely outside the thought that we would have of a traditional big box Target store in a regional mall. But think about that. It's better than the alternative, right? Shutting down completely and having no footprint. Absolutely.
I think they need to look at that. Maybe they have more smaller space. It probably is tremendous for their bottom line on overhead, right? I mean, and maybe they get the same
that's exactly
results on
what's
sales
happening. Certainly, big stores like Nordstrom's are taking different strategies as well. I mean, they're not the only ones. And the smaller retailers who have been online only now are also seeing a need to get back into that brick and mortar side of the business, i.e. the entertainment side of shopping. So that's happening too. And we're seeing that certainly with Amazon and their Whole Foods brand, and how we shop for groceries even. So, all of this is really changing. It's history in progress. And we're literally seeing that on every corner now in all of our cities, whether the big cities or small ones. So a lot of things going on with tech now in the industry that we just haven't had before. Global funds are coming in from Wall Street at a huge rate. They're really pumping big dollars into the real estate industry now with tech. We're seeing a lot of that, providing startups with a lot of these innovative technologies that simplify everything from research to property management. So 2019 is really kind of a tech year. We're just seeing the effect of this technology just saturating almost every part of our market now. It's that I personally find really, really interesting. On the commercial side too, costs are generally on the rise. Obviously, land costs in the major urban areas are going up and up. The cost of building is going up, which means the cost of maintaining your business and your lease also goes up. Those triple net costs that we have to pay along with our lease, all of those are going up. So it's not inexpensive now, to lease space downtown. We're seeing rates in primary cities pushing $50 per square foot per year on average, and going higher than that to $150 or even $200 per square foot per year. I mean, these are numbers that we just haven't seen before. So lots of things are changing. These West Coast markets are just really crushed right now, with Amazon's move, certainly here in the Seattle area. A lot of things are going on, and we're seeing that expansion happening right in front of our nose. It's that fast history that we're really beginning to see.
Man, it's really warp speed, isn't it? And so you're such an expert, especially on the West Coast. But why don't you just go a deeper dive and get specific with us on what's happening, let's say, in the Seattle and Portland markets, just right in your backyard. What are you seeing? What are you seeing personally and specifically?
Well, the big one starts with an A, and that's Amazon. And obviously, Amazon had a big footprint in downtown Seattle. Made the news here a couple of weeks ago, announcing a global shift to Bellevue. Doesn't mean they're pulling out of downtown Seattle or moving into downtown Bellevue now. They're announcing the build of a new 17-story high-rise and 377,000 square feet and some 2,000 to 3,000 employees. Last week, they just picked up another building down the street a couple of blocks for another $195 million.
Just because business is good, right?
Business is good. Yeah. It's got change. Let's buy the building, right?
Yeah.
We need more room. Mm-hmm. And so the impact of Amazon moving into downtown Bellevue, you can imagine what's that going to mean to employment, and where are all these people going to come from? Where's the job pool for all of these jobs, not only in downtown Seattle, but on the east side? So we're expecting to see, a big influx of new talent that's coming in from not only all over the world, but all over the United States. And they're going to hire that talent where they find it. All those people are going to come into Bellevue. We might be seeing, another 30 to 40,000 people this year that are brand new, and they all need places to live,
Yeah, because that affects residential and commercial. So think about this for a minute. I was thinking about Amazon, like when you put a stadium downtown, because at first, remember 30, 40 years ago, stadiums were in the suburbs. Oh, right. Well, then the shift is moving them all downtown, and you just think, man, they're just ramming in and cramming with parking, everything.
Yeah.
But what does that do what's the ripple effect?
Oh my God.
Something like that. And what is it for Amazon coming in? So you're saying, okay, gosh, 30,000 people coming in needing housing. What else? How else is everyone else affected business-wise around that?
Well, yes, and it's not just housing; it's infrastructure. So we need all the other parts and pieces to support that big housing model that we need, right? Mm-hmm. So people are moving in with families. They need schools. We need firemen and policemen and security, and so all of these other sort of tangential support pieces are part of that infrastructure that we need to support this bigger model that we're growing so fast. How do we keep up? And that's a big picture. You talk about the stadiums, of course, the NBA announcing we're coming back to Seattle again. The old Key Arena gets revitalized. And I talked to a new NBA client just last week looking for some more space. So, we're going to see that ripple of all of those things, whether it's baseball or football or now the new NBA, in addition to, the squeeze that's happening with high tech, both downtown and on the east side.
Okay, so boy, you're really in the lane in your market. Not everyone is.
No.
Not every market is growing. Do you have just a quick touch? I know we can't hit every market, but do you have any knowledge of, some markets that are maybe the opposite, that are in a total different, maybe a decline, or maybe just more of a modest plodding along? That changes in approach, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, obviously not everybody's in a Seattle market or a San Francisco market or even Los Angeles. And we've got other markets in the Midwest. And you say, well, what's going on there? And I really think we've been on kind of this parabolic shoot to the stars, for a while. But I think this third and fourth quarter, and I'll call it an adjustment for lack of a better word, it's not that the sales are lower. It's more that we're going back to normal again, and we've been so poised on doing that sort of ballistic rise that all of a sudden we start to flatten out and get normal. People think, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. It's not true.
So are you referring to last year, or are you kind of throwing in a little third, fourth quarter 2019 prediction?
Correct. Yeah. And so I think we're really, we start picking up obviously this spring, and I think we're going to level out here through the year. We're moving into election politics again. That always tends to flatten that curve a little bit. Right. I think a lot of the commercial forecasters are looking at that in office rents across the United States. And we're seeing that too with industrial rents, all beginning to rise modestly, but not dramatically. And that just frankly is a kind of real estate business that we want. We don't like the spiky sort of curve. We like those nice flat curves with some rise in them. And I think that's what we're going to see pretty much across the US.
So would you say, because Don and I were very, I think, bullish on the second quarter, we didn't want to go beyond that, but would you still, it sounds like it's smoking hot where you are, at least in your backyard, second quarter, but like you say, a return to more normal, which may feel like a pullback or even a slowdown, which will just be more of a normal breathe, plodding along after, perhaps.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Exactly it. And that's not bad. That's actually where we want to be.
No. All right. So you're an expert to answer. You're an expert to answer this question. So there's a lot of always a lot of media coverage on residential. What's the residential market doing? And there's definitely more residential agents than commercial. There's more residential transactions than commercial.
Yes.
I would say there's fewer people dealing with higher dollars in commercial. I think you and I talked about that before, right? So fewer dealing with bigger numbers. But what's the biggest difference between commercial and residential, just in general, whether it's, we can talk the agents, the transaction, the process, just give us.
Certainly it is really an apple and an orange, they're both round, but they do look very different.
Yeah.
And I think, characteristically, the commercial real estate is, and as I like to paraphrase, everything else that we don't live in. Everything else that we don't live in is that commercial.
Which is a lot. Well, it's everything. It's everything else, right?
Everything else, so take, your house and then everything else. And so you're right. Everything else is the food, the burger restaurant, the high-rise office tower, the shopping centers, the places where we go to the doctor and take our kids to the play and the entertainment, and it's all of that. It's all of that. So every day, commercial real estate is where we are every day, where we're not at home, where we're shopping, where we're eating and working and playing. I mean, that's commercial real estate. So you can imagine how big that is. And it's a bit of a paradigm shift, isn't it? That you think, well, we should have more of those, right? Than we do the residential broker. That's certainly not the case. We have a lot more residential brokers than commercial real estate.
Yeah.
And the whole process is very different. The learning curve is different. We need to learn different things as commercial real estate brokers than residential brokers do. And ultimately, it's not as emotional a sale, because we're not living in it. It's
more about the dollars, the bottom line.
Right.
Do the numbers make us? We're less concerned about the colors, and what will our friends think? I mean, maybe there's a thought process of what will the client think in the space.
Right. But it's more about what I need, and is it going to really fit into my wallet? Can I afford this? Is it going to work well for my business? Will it allow all the functional elements of my business to fit in this space? Whether I'm buying it or leasing it, right? We have both. But yes, it's very different.
So there's different people as well, and when you think about a commercial transaction and a residential transaction, some people are wired more for commercial than residential. So, and maybe if somebody's not doing well in residential, maybe they ought to look at commercial, and maybe vice versa.
Absolutely.
So what are some characteristics you tend to see, because you're kind of rolling on that emotional side of, and I got some thoughts too I want to weigh in, but what makes a good commercial agent? What makes a good residential, or better? What are some characteristics that tend to align for success?
The commercial real estate field, as we just sort of talked about, is a very broad field, and good agents and brokers can come from literally any personal background. But generally, we look for people or brokers that like to solve puzzles, that have that sort of intrinsic need to get in the middle of things and work through the puzzle elements and solve these riddles, because almost all of these commercial transactions have a lot of moving parts. And so I think the ability to manage, a project that includes a lot of moving parts is really important for commercial brokers to grasp. And I think certainly, as I've interviewed a lot of new commercial brokers, they kind of feel it intuitively. They're more interested in it. It's more of a curiosity for them, and they see a more of a passion. They're almost sort of bored with it if it doesn't include more of that sort of puzzle element to it. And along with it goes sort of deeper training for them individually to really understand how these elements play back and forth with each other. But I think the big piece is that ability to help people. We've really got to have the passion. Is we've got to help people, whether we're helping them to build wealth in their portfolios or helping them to start a new business venture or to support an existing business venture or move a business venture or create investments for themselves and their families. So agents need to be really intuitive about that ability to help people get to where they want to get to.
Yeah. That's really good. I think there's a couple other factors too. And when we talk about behavior, I think some people are more behaviorally wired for commercial. That doesn't mean they would make a great commercial agent, but there's some behavioral trends, or vice versa, that they couldn't make it in residential.
Yeah.
But I think some people that are more task oriented, dominance and even dominant compliance, maybe they're not very people focused, but like you said, you made a real key point. It's still a people game, even on the commercial side.
Correct.
And we're helping people. But somebody that is really solid with the numbers and maybe a little more matter of fact may work better with especially some higher big number folks on bigger projects, because they want to get right to the chase and we want to deal with the facts and so forth.
Well, we're always kind of mesmerized with the size of the deal, and the dollars are certainly fun to look at. But I think, again, the agents for the most part are just looking at the degree of difficulty, that is sort of inspiring, and the number of tasks that have to be accomplished, and to really understand what has to happen first before something else happens. And so you're right. It's a lot more tasking, perhaps.
Well, and let's play on that too. Generally, fewer transactions, but a higher payout. Correct. So when we think on the residential side, for example, like residential buyers are easier to get, but in this market where it's very strong, harder to get a commission.
Absolutely.
When you're talking about a seller on the residential side, they're harder to get, but easier to get a commission if they're motivated. You price it to sell. I think on the commercial side, getting a lease client is easier to get.
Yes. Yeah.
And probably a shorter sales cycle.
That's
probably you can turn those more quickly. A lessor is probably easier to get than a lessee, but I think on the commercial buy side, probably the same thing. A commercial buyer may be easier to acquire, maybe harder to get a check on. That I think the pinnacle would be getting a commercial seller, right? Really being able to bring value, especially on a large dollar price point, right? That somebody that they're going to trust. You got to bring something to the table for them, right?
Well, absolutely.
That's a whole different game.
And those deals can take a year, 2 years. I've had them last even 3 years before we saw a transition point.
Yeah, because you're 7, 8, 9 figures sometimes, and that's right. It changes the mix. Yeah. So that's different. All right. So now let's go to that commercial seller. All right. Takes quite a bit of skill to be able to bring value to them, and knowledge and understanding of the market and how that works. It's you don't have the access like you do on the residential side.
No.
So how do you counsel a commercial owner, building owner, on whether to sell or not? When is it best for them to sell?
Yeah.
Because I think we talk a lot about that on the residential side, and I think that's pretty clear cut. But what about on the commercial side?
Well, on the commercial side too, now we're talking about more than ever before. We really get into what happens from the tax side of things when we sell stuff. When we're moving from a house to a house, we have the benefits of being able to move after 5 years and have those exemptions take place. But
Mm-hmm.
that isn't so in the real estate world, in the commercial real estate world.
Mm-hmm.
As an investor, we're paying capital gains tax. So we have 1031 vehicles. We can move from one investment to the next, but we really need to understand, that investor, that owner's tax strategy and what role this building takes place for him and their business, and what are the tax elements of a change or a transition. So, a lot of times our initial sort of pre-qual meeting with our sellers has to do with how their business is structured and what are the tax implications of a move or a transition, and what are their thoughts or plans? Where do they want to be? So we really are now moving into more of the wealth planning dynamic, and what part does that have to play even in developing their companies? Are they
and involving their planners and their CPAs? They really need to get involved in that decision, don't they?
Absolutely, and in many cases we are. So we end up on that sales side really with a team of individuals that are part of that discussion. It's not just the owner entrepreneur necessarily, but it's all of his support staff, because they have input that's also valuable for us in making that transition occur. So there are again a lot of interesting pieces here, and even with corporations and how they might fund the purchase of a building, whether that comes in from an equity play or a stock play, or where that money comes from to fund expansion. Growth. Also, don't think about growth costs money. It costs money to grow, and to create these new facilities and grow. So while one side we want to grow quickly, but we may not have the capital available to grow as fast as we'd like to grow. So that's the other side of that picture.
Yeah, so there's more to it. You need to know your stuff, and you need to come in prepared and give value to them if you want to play in that arena. And I think right on the commercial side, it's kind of like on the residential, that agent may start out as a buy agent before they move to a list agent. That we want them to move as quickly to the list side as possible. On this side, I think becoming a lease agent first is probably a good move.
Absolutely.
Right? And then graduate yourself in and learn the buy side. It takes a lot of skill to be on there. It's definitely a differentiator. So now let's move to leasing versus buying. What should one consider? I kind of looked at that briefly just recently, but also I want to specifically talk, like, when should somebody decide what's best for them, leasing versus buying? Because I know you and I have talked, I've seen some of your large lease deals where it's a heavy 6-figure or 7-figure lease. And it's like, Keith, why didn't they just buy it? I mean, with all the money they're going in there. So talk about that. What should somebody think on whether it's best for them to lease versus buy?
Well, let's start out first. I wanted to sort of piggyback on that last comment, about the leasing agents and commercial agents in general that move into leasing. And we always like to teach the leasing element first, because that's the cash register that drives all of the commercial real estate business for investors. Because without that lease, whether it's internally or not, you might be the business owner that's leasing back to yourself, but it's the value of that lease that gives the value to the real estate.
Sure.
Otherwise, you have a lot of non-performing assets. So start out with that leasing side. And it's a very important cornerstone of that commercial brokerage experience. But more to your question about, do I buy it or do I lease it? There are a lot of decisions there, believe it or not. I mean, whether I buy or lease, and a lot of them may be significant to your business or your growth or where you want to be. You might have identified an ideal place for your business to be. You might be a retailer. I can think of a couple here in our area that it was really key for them to have what I call a 50-yard line presence in a major shopping district. But there simply was not a piece of real estate that they could buy. They had the money. They could buy what they wanted to buy. It just simply wasn't available. But they did have the option that they could lease it. So the choice for them was that if I want to be in this location, that leasing was the only opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other side is the buy side. In many cases, we do have the opportunity to buy that, and you're looking at six figures, to start a new business or a 10-year lease with triple net costs and basic rents. It's a lot of money. Why wouldn't I buy?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it can be just the barrier of entry to buy.
Mm-hmm.
It's having the down payment.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the loan programs in commercial real estate that the residential side has. So the idea for a low to no down program just doesn't exist for the most part.
Yeah.
There are programs. Certainly the SBA program is an important program for owner investors to invest in a building for themselves. The advantages are if you have the money and you can make that transition to buy, then the benefit of earning the equity over time, is certainly on your side. And that's always a plus. And so for owner investors, they may not want to lease everything, but they may not want to own everything either.
Yeah.
So it may be more strategic as they begin to grow.
So, that's so good. Give me the example. I think there was $1 million lease, and I asked you, and I can't remember if that was a restaurant, what that was.
Restaurant lease.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Just give us an example, because that was where, when we were just kind of having some prep for this, I said, how come they didn't just buy that? It was a seven-figure lease.
Yeah.
What was the reason?
One of the big parts of their strategy, their business plan had to do with demographics and location, and where they wanted to be was in our downtown, Bellevue core, where they had access to a lot of that high tech talent that is working downtown, and that was part of their model was to have the sort of menu, the products, the services that fit that clientele. So they couldn't really buy it. They had to lease it. And so then it became, well, which building and where do we go? And now we're looking at really converting what I call kind of vanilla space and turning that into a restaurant. And we've got all kinds of moving parts that you wouldn't see in an office lease, and so, for a restaurant, on average, we're looking at $400 to $600 a square foot just to do the 10 improvements for that new restaurant. So, boy, before you know it, we're going to get to $1 million pretty fast.
Well, and I think for them too, at the end of the day, what's most important, right?
Exactly.
And how does it affect the bottom line and our overhead?
And so in this, so exactly in this sort of example, it made sense. They knew that they were going to get enough business to support that $1 million investment over the next 10 years and make the profit margin that they wanted to make. And so now that lease became a business decision, a conscious one. We're going to put $1 million in up front, and we need to get that return out of the back, over that 10-year period.
Right, and amortize that out. And I think the other thing too, when it goes that way, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're in on a 10-year lease and you get established, right?
Yeah.
And it comes for renewal time, generally speaking, isn't the renewal so much more likely? Because first of all, changing locations on something like that is very costly, and you lose your clientele. You want to maybe add another location somewhere else, but moving that would be really strategically complex and costly. And for the owner, right? I mean,
the owner likes you there,
right?
You're bringing in a lot of trade.
You've proved yourself as a tenant, and probably if there's other space, probably drove traffic there too on a big. You're going to have a lot of foot traffic on a. And
the landlords and the building owners know that you're bringing a lot of value to their building, by being there, and a bit of an anchor. So people get to know you, and they know what you are and what food you have and the presence that you have, and so nobody really wants you to move at that point,
Yeah, it just makes the release so much more of a natural. I would think
it is.
In most cases, and there's exceptions to that, I'm sure. you're going down there.
To your point, it's also hard for the new guy to get in, right? Because the old guys are sticking around.
Yeah. You kind of have it tied up on that. That's great. All right. So if you're looking to lease a property, do you really need a lease agent? Now, I've done it both ways. And I've got I want to weigh in a little bit.
T-shirt.
Yeah. But, we have LoopNet, right? So, So you kind of have the same access. It's different than on the residential side. You don't, if you're just an unrepresented buyer, you could look in on, I guess, on Zillow, but you don't have access to the full MLS. But on commercial, it's LoopNet pretty much. And if it's there, it is for anyone. So do you really need, let's say it's a 3 to 5 year lease, right? It's not a super big, it's a low 6-figure lease or high 5-figure lease. Do you really need a lease agent? And if so, why and what should you look for in that agent?
That's a great question. First of all, let's talk about LoopNet. LoopNet is owned by a company called CoStar, probably one of the largest national commercial real estate databases. And LoopNet, you're right, is that listing portal or the information database that CoStar manages for a lot of commercial brokers. So while you might be looking at LoopNet as a consumer, the commercial brokers are looking at CoStar and they're seeing the same information. So LoopNet, certainly is extremely valuable in presenting you, like any internet portal, to the opportunities that are out there, and you get a chance to look at what's available for lease. That's relatively easy. It's plug and play and right on your computer, and you can look around and take a look at these properties and look at video and all of that. And then it comes down to, how do I execute the deal? Now I picked one, right? I picked one, and now what? Well, the default is that you're going to talk to the landlord's representative. So now you're talking to the landlord. Well, in a lot of cases, that may not be the best person that is going to hold up things that you want in the deal. Now, everything that you do is kind of twisted to what the landlord wants and maybe not what you want. So I really think whether the deal is big or small, you need an advocate. You need to have someone on your team that represents you as a tenant. We call that a tenant representative. On the residential side, we might want to call it a buyer representative, but it's the same type of thing, that you want an advocate on your side that's going to fight for the issues that you want, whether it's more parking or even control. Let's talk about the document itself, which you had kind of personal experience, I'm sure this. It isn't a 2-page lease agreement.
No,
it's like 50 pages of legalese, and there's all kinds of hidden gems in there that your advocate, your tenant representative, is going to help you navigate and get through. What is this stuff? What are these? What do they call cams? What is that? And what's this triple net stuff? What is that?
And it's the lease that you do a letter of intent.
Correct.
And then a lease comes back to you. How do you know that that's that you're really represented? It's in your interest, because if it's coming from the landlord, right, the owner on that, well, it's his attorney that's drafting that, and it's in his favor.
That's right.
I totally agree with you. I mean, they're going, just like in the residential side, generally the listing side is going to pay for it. So the landlord will pay for the commission for that lease agent.
That's correct. Yeah.
And you want a good one to help navigate you through. They do this every day, and there's complexity to it. And just like you're saying, it's the cornerstone of the commercial real estate industry. But there are lawsuits that take place from breached leases, and there has to be an understanding up front, because this is a business transaction.
Well, absolutely, and ignorance is no excuse, right? So now you're in the lease, you sign the document, you work with the landlord's representation, and all of a sudden you're reading through this one Sunday night, and you're looking at a paragraph that doesn't quite make sense, and say, gee, did I actually sign that? And that's what happens. And all of a sudden we're bound to issues that we may not have agreed to if we really knew more about them. So Knowledge is power, and I think that having your own advocate helps you to gain that knowledge and really look and understand exactly what you're signing in that 50-page lease.
Right.
And it's going to be with you for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just my personal experience on just signing on the space here, my lease agent, and I hope she's listening, Yvonne, she's a rock star. And she really, I've done it both ways, mostly had representation. I think the last one, I just jumped straight to the the listing lease agent, and he kind of wrote it for me. But it was it worked out. It was fine. Eyes open when you have the right one to navigate through. And she also talked me off the ledge on a couple things where she also said, listen, you're going into a relationship, you're playing maybe too strong of a hand on that. You got to look at the big picture. And that was real helpful too. Somebody to speak straight and because you're going to maybe even be sharing the same space, right? Or the same building. They may be also owner occupied. So
that's right.
And crossing, that's right, in some cases. And so, relationships are important, and trust. And you gotta, there's some things that aren't worth fighting for, right? Little nickel and diming or anything like that. So very, very helpful, and the legalese and really getting what was really what I thought best for us. Great negotiation.
In your situation, your tenant rep was able to identify the deal points, the primary deal points, the big rocks in the jar, right?
Right.
And not to focus on the sand at the bottom. Right. Let's get the big rocks in the jar first,
right, and
then fill in later with the sand that kind of fills in all the cracks.
Well, that's the thing, because I've signed up a half a dozen leases or so, and you kind of think, stuff, just like maybe the home buyer on a residential side or even on the commercial side. You've done a handful of deals. These folks are doing, a handful a week, and the laws change, and you get. In the state houses, they're passing stuff left and right on all this stuff that you have to keep up on.
That relationship with your new landlord. He's looking at you as critically as you are looking at them. He's looking at you and said, why would I select you? I've got 6 other people that have also written letters of intent, and they all want to be here. So how do I pick the right person, the right fit, the right personality to move into my building to enter into that long-term relationship with me? So, it's a bigger deal.
It wasn't 6, it was one other, and they put us in first position, and good P&Ls help, right? So that's one thing, a good reputation, being around for a while, but all that plays in there. So, all right, last question, we'll wrap up. This has been great, Keith. I just learned so much on there. So skill development, there's so much emphasis on the residential side. And in fact, I think the concept of coaching probably started, my guess, with real estate back in the 90s, probably early 2000s, but on the residential side. But just coaching, training in general, agent development, there's so much focus on residential and very little on commercial. Why do you think that is? And what can be done to change that? What can we do to change that?
I think that's a great question. And the answer is, what can we do to change that? I think there's industry-wide, and we know this, that there's a lot of teaching out there and coaching per se for fundamentals training. And I think fundamentals are going to be the same for the commercial agent as they are with the residential agent. But I think a lot of that coaching either leaves at that point for some reason. I'm not in agreement with that. I think everyone should really have a business coach, just like yourself. But I think that particularly for the commercial agents, having that coaching experience to work through these puzzles as they begin to learn these skill sets. And every time you get in the ring with a new transaction, the people are different, the issues are different, the puzzle is different. And really having someone on your side, a coach that's that's there to walk through you with this as you move your way along. Things will come up that you had no idea were going to pop up. In addition to just a monumental number of just personal challenges with personalities, the behavioral selling issues that pop into play. Now we're not just working with a buyer and a seller. We've got the whole team in the room. You know, we've got the CPAs, we got the attorneys in there, we got the insurance people in there. Everybody's in there and they've all got their opinions. And so we have to really kind of orchestrate all of that and bring it all to a single conclusion. So the coaching side, I think, is a really worthwhile skill. The other piece is just understanding, you know, that the real skills involved with a leasing broker and an investment or sales broker, and they're very different. You know, I've had brokers in my group that were just exclusively focused on leasing. That's all they did. And they made over $1 million a year.
Right.
Leasing.
They laned themselves, they siloed themselves and became an expert. And everybody would turn to them, and they would get all the great probably on the list side more so at the toward the end, right?
Yeah. You know, a good leasing agent will know his inventory upside down and sideways. They know where the people are moving in and where they're moving out and where people need to be. And it's just like this massive checkerboard where people are moving and shifting and changing all the time. And so their opportunities are all over the checkerboard. They're finding opportunities where they didn't think were there. And an office will open up and an office will leave and vacate and get leased and new people move in and the whole thing changes. So now you have a very myopic view to say just an office leasing agent or a retail leasing agent or an industrial leasing agent. And that's their whole career. They don't move beyond that spot. And they're expert in their fields. You know,
that's interesting. Well, listen, Keith, anything else you want to add to wrap to today? It's just been such a great time, and thank you so much for giving your time of this and your knowledge, your expertise. You are a master of this. There's no doubt. And I know we could go for hours and hours and on, but anything else you want to do just to put a bow or a wrap on just today and what?
The one thing that really hits me in my mind, you know, is the idea of untapped business, and certainly that's true in our own organization where we have, you know, a lot of residential brokers that have spent their careers and their lifetime building relationships with people, buying and selling their homes, their personal residences. But they build a lot of trust with these individuals, and they are also the captains of industry that we get introduced to. And this is untapped business for a lot of brokerage houses that I think we fail to see. You know, in a more traditional commercial real estate firm, it's always about the property management, just commercial brokerage. But when we have a company like Coldwell Banker Bain, where we have a large group of residential brokers, I think what we're seeing certainly with us right now is the untapped potential of all those new commercial transactions as residential agents begin to ask the big question, what kind of commercial needs might you have that we just didn't have before? So I would encourage more of that. Encourage more learning for residential agents that feel like they have a need.
And a great resource for commercial agents, I would think, because in most cases, they should just refer to their brother or sister on the other side. In most cases, right? Because there's a lot to learn and get into.
You know, it's like
you want to serve your client well.
Yeah, we don't all want to be attorneys, right? You know, it takes a long time to go to school and learn how to be one. And so it's always best, whatever field it is, to hire that expert rather than to try and become one yourself.
Right. So the residential should have a commercial partner. Commercial partner should probably have a residential partner to keep so we keep on there and cross-pollinate each other. I think that's a great takeaway to roll. And I think, you know, just one little cap on the whole focus on training and development and coaching for the commercial side. I think it's a numbers game, right? I think there's so many in residential. It's on the transaction, maybe not the dollar side, but I think more is needed, and we're making ourselves available, right? So obviously you're a wealth of knowledge. We're available. Coach Don, we have a great team here. So we're here as well. So anybody has any questions or comments or would like to learn more, you can certainly opt in. We'll spend time, no obligation to answer questions, let you know what that would look like on how coaching, primarily, also training, but coaching helps you to exponentially grow your business. We go from generalities to specifics. We help people set and achieve larger goals than they thought possible because they didn't know how to get there, didn't think they could, how to exponentially, step by step, grow that commercial side as well. So we're here for that. So thank you so much, Keith, for being here. Let's do this again. Let's do it again soon.
I'm ready.
And thank you, everyone. If you have questions for Keith McKinney, you can go to smartsalessolutions.com. Go to our blog page as well. There's additional information from today. You can click and get into Keith's bio, myself, any one of our coaches. Let us know how we can help serve you. Have a great rest of Q2 and rest of the year. Let's go do commercial real estate right and have a great rest of the year. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rich.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Smart Sales Solutions podcast. For more information, go to smartsalessolutions.com.